and girls, after a brief hiatus, welcome back to the Magic Box. I am Tristan Sean Gregson here with Kyle Eck. It's been a long time. What's
a little
new?
Mini vacation.
Yeah, impromptu. I had finals last week. A lot of projects I'm working on. Still pretty busy right now. Finals last week. We have a set release with M14, but thankfully nothing stops the Cube machine. We are here now.
And now we have the Magic Online Cube to welcome us back to the Cube internet world.
So if you're listening to this after the fact, which most of you are, go on over, check out the Twitch archives for our stream Cube drafts later. We'll probably get at least one in tonight. Eck will be back every day of the week, as he promises, to show you more. I might drop in, depending on how much free time I have. That'll be a lot of fun. It seems like a lot has happened since we were last here. We have now completely immersed ourselves in M14. We've seen the whole thing. We kind of have what was a preliminary list of changes we want to make to the Cube. Pretty small list this time, and not a lot of lobbying, not a lot of jostling this time around. Kind of some minor changes.
Overall was pretty underpowered. I think it's a core set, so a lot of its reprints, those don't affect us. But the new cards this time around, there really weren't nearly as many standouts as in previous core sets, I think.
And we weren't trying to make any overly sweeping changes.
No, we weren't revamping anything.
No, it was just purely where can we make slight improvements, where can we kind of like maybe try new angles with new cards. So we'll eventually get to that in our list of topics today. I don't remember what's in our show notes because I put together so long, but we will be taking a look at new card fights. Some versus series for us to kind of get an idea of directions you may want to go with individual cards in Cube. We will do an M14 kind of roundup session. We'll talk about the changes to the MTGO Cube.
Brief though they may be.
Yeah, actually that's a good talking point for this week. But before we get into that, we'll dive headlong into the pool of card selections. Here's this week's Pick One, Pack One.
For those of you on the audio side, TSG just made like an adorable, like I'm diving into a tiny pool of water motion. Alright, so for Pick One, Pack One this week, our pack is Woodfall Primus, River Boa, Winter Orb, Strangleroot Geist, Impulse, Cloud Goat Ranger, Conqueror's Pledge, Ral Zarek, Vivid Marsh, Pack Rat, Luminarch Ascension, Glen Elendra Archmage, Solemn Simulacrum, Caracas, and Blistering Fire Cat. What do we like here?
Oh, white and blue cards is what I'm looking at here.
A lot of green cards, too. Triple green, triple white, triple red, also.
Thematic.
Yeah.
Cloud Goat Ranger jumps out at me. Impulse actually jumps out at me, and that might be it. It's hard not to take a Planeswalker when there's a Planeswalker in a pack, but if there is a two-color one, it's a little easier to dismiss it.
He really impressed me, though. I kind of got my first hands-on experience playing him the other day, and he did a lot of work. Clearing blockers out of the way. He fights other Planeswalkers really well.
Ral Zarek, that is.
Ral Zarek,
if you'd forgotten from the initial...
Being able to use him to accelerate... also...
Or mana fix in your case.
Yeah, kind of all the above was useful. I like Ral. Again, like you said, it's hard to turn down Planeswalkers. This is really a... kind of no matter which direction you... like, there are a lot of really mana-intensive picks in this pack. Like Strangleroot Geist, Woodfall Primus, Conqueror's Pledge, Blistering Fire Cat, even Pack Rat, are all very deep in their respective colors. So I'm not necessarily opposed to taking Elzarek first overall.
Really? Okay.
Purely on power level.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the safest pick, but I feel like I'm not necessarily passing like either a bomb or an engine. I mean, I guess you could argue that Pack Rat's probably one of the most powerful cards in the pack. That's probably what I would consider the safest pick.
I think the safest pick is probably Solemn Simulacrum.
Yeah, but I think the best combination of safety and power is probably Pack Rat.
Okay.
Like, you're always going to play it. It's always going to be good. Like,
I'm taking Army in a can here. I'm taking Cloud Guard Ranger. I'm going double white. I'm not going triple white. I think that's the power level I'm looking for. If I wasn't going to take Cloud Goat Ranger, I would take Impulse, and that's because that'll open me up to more control and combo type elements. Although our combo decks in our cube are a little bit different from a classic combo cube. That's really fall. But I could definitely see worlds where you would take a Solemn or maybe a Ral. Pack Rat, maybe, but I'll go with Cloud Goat Ranger. What about you?
I think I'm going Ral Zarek or Pack Rat. Probably Ral.
He's that good.
I thought he was really good. Again,
do you think he's more of a blue touching red card more often, or is he more of a red card touching blue? Or because you don't want to like take it and be like, okay, I'm drafting red blue. You want to take it knowing that like, well, I could touch on one of those other colors.
I think he works either way.
Okay.
I think
that's the versatility.
Yeah, you want to look for either, ways to make his lightning bolt more relevant. So like in red, using him as just being able to go to the face and being like another burn spell that has some added utility, or being in blue where, maybe you're tapping a blocker so you could force through a Ninja of the Deep Hours, or maybe you're untapping that Grim Monolith that you played him with, or whatever. Having that effect, I think, is really good. He does a lot of different things.
One thing in practice more than in theory was, since the card does go both ways, you actually have a lot more versatility in the capacity to tap an opposing blocker, or what actually ended up coming up more commonly than I thought would be untap an attacker to then be able to help protect Ral Zarek the following turn, which I think is one of the reasons he's more resilient than he kind of looks like he is on paper.
Right. At first glance, looking at the guy's like, oh, he doesn't defend himself, why bother? But being able to kind of like pseudo-vigilance your guy is actually sweet. Clearing guys out is always good. And like I said, he fights other planeswalkers really well. Like, a lot of times, you can get half a planeswalker dead with some creature or whatever, and you can't finish them off, and Ral Zarek is a great way to just bolt them and do it that way. No, I really like him. I've yet to ultimate him, but
I don't think that's the bee's knees anyway. I don't think the bread and the butter of the Ral Zarek is the ultimate. I think that his the versatility that we've highlighted in this segment is really what makes him a quality card.
Yeah, I like Ral.
What else we got?
All right, so we're gonna do some scenarios now. So in this first scenario, we have 4 cards. They are Survival of the Fittest, Stinkweed Imp, Avenger of Zendikar, Craterhoof Behemoth.
I like it.
So in our pack, we are past 11 cards. We have Spell Pierce, Greater Gargadon, Repeal, Marsh Flitter, Ral Zarek again, Standstill, Ranger of Eos, Phyrexian Arena, Ninja of Deep Hours, Tropical Island, and Tainted Pact. What's the pick?
I think I'm probably taking Tainted Pact here because it looks like I'm trying to play some kind of Reanimator theme with my survival. In this particular draft, assuming we took these 4 cards in order, we went survival right into Stinkweed Imp. We're probably trying to take that angle. Although I do like how we immediately followed up with Avenger into Craterhoof Behemoth being like this sweet backup plan of like, well, if we just play the curve.
I'm pretty ready to shove all in here on Marsh Flitter.
I don't think that's shoving all in. I think
that's very clearly shoving on. I am banking on getting Recurring Nightmare.
Oh, interesting.
Marsh Flitter, traditionally speaking, Marsh Flitter is not a card where I am thrilled with its power level. But in this kind of deck, it's potentially very, very strong, provided you have some way to abuse the tokens.
It's just a good speed bump, I think. I could get behind taking Marsh Flitter because, again, let's say we don't end up drafting or getting the cards to play the Reanimator version of our deck. We end up playing some kind of green ramp version of this deck. One of the definite holes, especially in the green decks, is you don't have a lot of opportunities to kind of create the speed bumps, the roadblocks. And Marsh Flitter has the versatility where it can kind of act as a phantom monster, but can also kind of act as this pseudo Singer autocrat. I don't know if that's the best example, but that's what sprang to mind.
Alternatively, I kind of like what Sam's talking about in chat, which is just taking Tropical Island and ignoring the fact that there's a Stinkweed Imp. Because it's our only black card, and it's not at all necessary to make Survival, Avenger, Craterhoof Behemoth good. We could just completely ignore that and play green-blue. Mm-hmm. Or play green anything, for that matter. If there are a green card in this pack, I would very likely be taking it.
Yeah, it's kind of convenient. This pack is devoid of a green card.
Yeah, go figure.
It's completely. This is not at all staged.
So,
end of the day, I'm taking the Tainted Pact.
Yeah, I think I like either Tropical Island or Marsh Flitter, depending on how deep I want to go. Like,
in your defense, you can take the Trop and
probably get that Marsh Flitter back.
I was going to say get the Tainted Pact back, because Tainted Pact increases in value for every non-basic land you can put in your deck. It becomes more Demonic Tutor and less, I have to take the first kind of reasonable thing I see.
I don't know.
I do like the Roadblock. I mean, we've definitely centered it on these 3 cards, and I like the idea of the Marsh Flitter Roadblock.
I don't like Roadblocks that cost 4.
Yeah,
like, it's just too slow. Like, you know, if it was 2 mana and put 1 Goblin into play or something, then I would consider that a lot higher. As it stands right now, that card is existing purely to get nutty with Recurring Nightmare. So that's kind of where, if I was taking that card, that's like, I am Snap looking for Recurring Nightmare /
You were already doing that.
Yeah, but like, you know, right now, like, Survival Avenger Creative Behemoth is a fine green base. You do not necessarily need that Stinkweed Imp. You could play green-blue, you could play green-white.
Even in a green-blue deck, you can just put the...
You can even take that Ranger of Eos. You can even take that Ranger of Eos with the assumption that you're going to get the Mana Elves. Because green-white's one of the best color combinations for it in terms of value.
Yeah.
So, you know, but if you want to utilize that Stinkweed Imp and try and go the more graveyard-heavy recursion version of this deck, I think Marsh Flitter is the way to go.
Okay, well, I've got Pact. You've got Island at the end of the day, or you've got Flitter?
I think it's a coin flip between the two, and it really depends on my mood. I think today I'm going to go Marsh Flitter, but I could very easily be taking Tropical Island in the same situation on a different day.
All right, what do we got next?
Next scenario, a little different. 4 cards are Zealous Conscripts, Mind Twist, Gitu Slinger, Kiki Jiki, the Mirror Breaker. The pack we are past is Rolling Earthquake, Nephalia Drownyard, Psychotog, Seaside Citadel, Magus of the Scroll, Wildfire, Stinkweed Imp again, Stormkirk Noble, Guardian Idol, Withered Wretch, Triskelion.
There's a lot in our kind of like base color in this pack, unlike the previous example. All red all the time. And we have had access to the Zealous Conscript Kiki Jiki Infinite combo. A little bit of just value red business going on beyond that. And we'd like to further that. I mean, I don't know how much, if we're going to go deep into the combo avenue, or if we're just kind of try to take value cards. I think I can quickly narrow this one down to Guardian Idol Triskelion, though, personally. What about you?
I want Stormkirk Double.
Okay.
I will gladly ignore that Mind Twist to play Mono Red. I'll maybe splash that Mind Twist if it becomes convenient.
Okay. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, again, Kiki Jiki with the triple red, that's going to be a pretty...
Yeah, like, you want to be base
deal.
red, but, like, even in my cards right now, like, even ignoring that Kiki Jiki, I still want Stormkirk Noble and just play Mono Red aggro. The Kiki Jiki might make it into the deck as a top end just because it interacts so well with.
So you're looking more at like 2 of the 4 cards you've taken. You're looking at the Gitu Slinger and the Zealous Conscripts being like, these are aggro red cards, and I want to go down that avenue.
What I'm looking at here is, I have a Kiki Jiki and a Zealous Conscripts. They are a combo, but I do not want to play that combo deck because it is pretty awkward, and like, I just don't want to try and have 2 5-drops that are 3 and 2 toughness relative, in play at the same time as my primary source of winning the game. I would much rather play a extremely aggressive red deck with the top end of Zealous Conscripts and potentially Kiki Jiki to either copy value red guys like Gitu Slinger or maybe steal a game if I've run my opponent out of removal. Like, Stormkirk Noble, like, your A plan in red should be being aggressive. Like, especially with the cards you already have, you should be looking to beat down in red, and with the stuff that we have. So Stormkirk Noble makes perfect sense. Having Kiki Jiki and Zealous Conscripts as like a backup, like, distant B plan that like might come together on the natural, but you're not really going to work for it, is fine, because it still instantly wins the game when it does come together. And both one card is actively good, and the other card is actively okay.
Yeah, I guess Kiki Jiki in a vacuum
Like,
is
Zealous
actively
Conscripts is
okay.
fine. I'm totally fine
It's
with...
better than fine. It's first pickable, in my opinion.
I don't think it's first pickable, but I think it's fine. I think that the aggro red deck wants 1 5-drop usually. Zealous Conscripts is below Thundermaw Hellkite, in my opinion, but like either are okay. Kiki Jiki would be our second, and that's not great because I want the deck to be faster, but given the fact that we have the combo, I'm willing to make that adjustment, but I'm looking to be as aggressive as possible here. And Stormkirk is a fine pick for that.
Okay.
We could possibly even get that.
Noble it is.
We could possibly even get that Magus of the Scroll on the wheel.
Oh, we most likely will. Assuming this is an 8-man draft and you're the one aggressively moving into red, we're not going to say that someone else didn't open Goblin Guide, get past Chain Lightning or something.
I mean, the 3 cards we're very likely getting back at the end are going to be like Stinkweed Imp, Withered Wretch, the Valiant Drown Yard.
Yeah, that's possible.
But I mean, we could get Magus of the Scroll back, which is fine.
It doesn't matter. It's not affecting your choice.
No.
So you're going with Stormkirk Noble. I'm going with Guardian Idol there because I want to live the combo-y dream, and 2-mana accelerants are definitely a premium in Cube, and I think that you're just going to get a lot more versatility there. Although, very compelling argument for going aggressive red there. I just think that I don't want to discount the power of the combo, and I don't want to immediately discount the power of Mind Twist. I'm not saying, again, I'm not married to black 4 cards or even 5 picks in with a colorless card, but I want to leave more avenues open there. But I think by taking Stormkirk Noble, you're definitely you're picking a direction, which is not wrong or bad. I think it's definitely a good way to go.
I'm just, I see so many Cube decks that their primary focus is being cute, and they never do well. Like, look at this awesome 3-card interaction I have. Like, holy shit, this is really cool. And then they just want to because they're slow or dirty. It's like,
Be mindful. Pick up your 2-mana accelerants.
Yeah. All right.
My thoughts. So next on the docket, we have the MTGO Cube update, which was pretty out of character this time.
4 cards. Count them.
Yeah.
4.
I think
after the last update, which was what, like 150? Something insane.
Well, post Invitational or post MTGO Champs, they kind of scaled it back a little bit. But with every kind of set release for MTGO, there's a lot of beefing. They seem like they pull in a lot of cards from the new set.
They do a lot of the new set spotlight.
Exactly.
Like, here, check out these new cards.
And I'm very happy this time around that we didn't get that. Although it's a bit of a shock. I was really surprised when I saw the update to the. If you want to pull up the link so we can get exactly what we got there. Yeah. Only 4 cards in total this time around. Much more subdued in the changes. And
again, I'm fine with that.
This is not as much explanation. When we did the last show...
No explanation ever.
When we did the last show about the MTGO Cube and kind of what we would like to see kind of grow out of it, an explanation article would be spectacular. But again, of all the cards that you could have seen from Dragon's Maze, they hit 3 what I felt like were like autos, and then...
voiceover starters for Gaddock okay, that's a change that we have actually talked about extensively. I totally understand. I still want voice in our cube, fighting to try and figure out where it fits. I get that. Ral Zarek replacing Fire and Ice, I don't fully agree with, but you have to get Ral in there.
It's the MTGO Cube. That doesn't surprise me at all.
I mean, yeah. Aetheling for Sphinx of Jwar Isle.
Pretty straight on.
That's pretty close. Yeah.
Still 720 cards in their cube, so maybe they could have beefed up the number of blue 6-drops there are by 1.
I mean,
but if you aren't going to...
They already have plenty. And so the last change is Deadbridge Chant replacing Abrupt Decay.
I'm fine with that.
That one was the weirdest to me because I'm actively not a fan of Deadbridge Chant.
Oh, well, I'm mostly not a fan of Abrupt Decay, so...
I mean, I know you're not a fan of Abrupt Decay. I'm not a fan of Deadbridge Chant, so this change is none of us are happy.
Okay. I think that the changes they made ultimately were kind of, middle of the road. I don't think it's too big of a deal.
This is too small of a change to really affect how this cube plays. Nothing that they've done here, it's 6-drop blue finisher for 6-drop blue finisher. 2-drop green white guy for 2-drop green white guy.
Exactly.
Stupid enchantment that doesn't do anything versus narrow removal spell.
It's not a stupid enchantment. It's just really rough in a 40-card limited format where you're going to take a 6-mana enchantment,
right.
And the first line of text says mill 10 off your own library.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. It's in this format. It's a stupid enchantment that doesn't do anything.
All right.
And then Ral for Fire and Ice, which is like a mild change, but doesn't really affect.
I think for our cube personally, and for the conversations we've had about cube, it's almost a big bonus for us. It's like somebody gets to kind of do the legwork for us in really testing that card, because at the end of the day, in the theory crafting of Dragon's Maze, we kind of left it at, oh, that seems a bit sketchy. Like, we only got 40 cards and mill 10s. Yeah, well, we talked about it extensively, and even after the set release, I was like, oh, maybe we're missing something. Like, maybe that could have been the card.
So their blue-red cards right now are Niv Mizzet, Draco Genius,
who I would have been happy to cut for Fire Ice.
Yeah. Electrolyze.
They have
Prophetic Bolt still in.
And Is It Charm.
Prophetic Bolt, Is It Charm, Electrolyze, Niv Mizzy.
So if we were running the MTGO cube, it would have been like, get out of there.
Prophetic Bolt? Like the changes that we made?
No, we would have cut Draco Genius.
Oh, yeah.
I would have cut Niv Mizzet and left the Fire Ice behind.
I mean, yeah.
But Niv Mizzet is just so mana hungry, and he's like colored mana hungry. You can't even
you can't like
cheat him into play and have him be super.
Channel into Niv Mizzet.
Okay, I was just thinking like reanimated Niv Mizzet.
Yeah.
Prophetic Bolt is sweet. I like that card. It's just a bit expensive. So really, I mean, if we go back to sets like Avacyn Restored, and you had to put in cards like Rite of Ruin into cube just because
it's new.
Yeah, obviously that's a bit of an outlier. But for the most part, MTGO cube changes with each set release.
On the plus side, I'd just like to say one thing in defense of Deadbridge Chant. Now Academy Rector has something to go get.
My God, wait, is there no?
There's nothing.
This is the big. There's no form.
There is no form of the dragon. There is no Yawgmoth's Bargain. There's no moat. Like,
that's true. Dragons, quote unquote, are a dime a dozen in Magic in general.
Well, and
Fire Ice spells.
There's no the Abyss either for.
There's no Abyss. Oh, yeah, that's right. That was in Power Cube only.
So yeah, the thing about cube building, which kind of you have to be aware of, is it's very easy to go mono dragons in terms of cube design, and that was a place that we were at for a long time, and we've really had to work to scale back, because like on paper you're like, oh my god, look at all these awesome 6 and 7s, like they're so bomby, they win the game on the spot, all of them, and then like you open packs and every card in it costs 6 or more, except for like one lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cube construction and maintenance kind of goes along a lot of with like the first days of playing Magic, where you'd always put all of
pile of crawlworms,
all of and the most expensive spells and cards you could, because those were the most fun, the most powerful, the most exciting, and over time you begin to really enjoy the reckless waifs of Magic.
Sure.
The not so much the albino trolls, but something similar along those lines.
So I mean, there's still the general talking points we had about the Moto Cube from our previous episodes still stand. Mana fixing is incredibly prevalent. It is very easy to play 2 or 3 colors, or three colors if you want.
I feel so disconnected now, because like we had Holiday Cube, then we had like what felt like just the MTGO Champs Cube, although I guess that's what stuck.
Yeah.
It's difficult to remember like which is the cube we play with, because the cube that like was active for a while before Powered Cube wasn't the one with the Mirage.
Yeah. Stuff goes back and forth.
It's only around for like a week, so you're like, well, what version did they give us?
Well, this one has Ravenous Rats in it, so
go deep there.
Yeah.
It's also important to point out that again you already mentioned about Academy Rector, but the cards that did get added, it's not like they enabled a new rabbit hole, like they didn't bring in a whole new strategy.
And this cube is also, this list is notorious for having rabbit holes that are not worth going down. They're like trap cards. Like Academy Rector is like the big one, because there's just no enchantments to get that are any good.
And in this version of the cube, mostly Storm.
Yeah, Mine's Desire is the other one I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Because they took out a bunch of the good Storm enablers.
So I don't see Mine's. Is this Sorceries? Oh, there, it's Sorceries. Sorry.
So Mine's Desire is like not nearly at the power level. I know Nathan Holiday will be very sad to hear this. It's not nearly at the power level that it was in earlier iterations, especially the powered cube. Like, the powered cube was very, very good because of Moxon.
Yeah, it's almost too much of an outlier to mention. But previous iterations of MTGO Cube were a lot more storm-friendly.
So it kind of got the nerf bat taken to it to a pretty strong degree. But mana fixing, like, playing him, 3 or even a 4-color deck is very possible. There's a lot of mana fixing that is very good in this cube.
Evaluating lands is almost more difficult in this cube than I would say in our own cube environment, because there are so many with such frequency that you don't know what's going to table as often or how to evaluate them because of
That's one of the challenges with this cube, especially because it's always up for such a short amount of time, that it's very difficult to get a handle on what will table and what will not, just because people don't play enough with it, and the people you're playing with are not regulars, so to speak. Like, when you're cubing, with your buddies or at your local gaming store,
with a list that's also consistent.
Right, the list is consistent, but the people are also consistent. Mm-hmm. So everyone kind of has their own tendencies. Oh, I know that this card always tables. I always see it. I know I can chip it and get it back. Or certain stuff, like trends form over time. With the Moto Cube, you have a lot of people who don't even necessarily know the list because they don't look at it ahead of time, or they only play it once and then drop it. So
I would almost say there are almost zero universal constants of this cube.
Right. So I think my general rule of thumb, once I know what I am drafting, like once I get out of like the initial picks of like, okay, this is what I want my deck to look like. I am blue-white control. I am black aggro, whatever it is. Once I get out of that phase, when I'm looking at packs, if there is not a card that I think I will either play or routinely sideboard in, like Disenchant, for instance. Mm-hmm. If there is not one of those cards where I'm going to be using it, I will almost always just take one of the available dual lands, even if it is not for my colors.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Like, rather than try and, like, hack or take, like, middling, like, 23rd picks, I'll just take Taiga when I'm playing blue-black. Just because, like, there's so much mana fixing, you might just fall ass backwards into enough of it to play all your colors and play really powerful spells. There's just a ton. And so I think that that's something to be aware of in this cube, is just like there is so much mana fixing that you can if you wanted to play 5 colors every time you drafted this cube, you absolutely could.
Huh. I don't know if I go that far. I think one of the things you can count on, and that I have definitely seen be very evident, is that the Ice Age Pain lands are pretty low on everyone's priorities.
Right. They are like the worst of the mana fixing that is available.
And if you were going to attempt to table anything, that would...
or bounce lands. You could absolutely table bounce lands or pain lands.
Or bounce lands in this cube?
Oh, yeah.
Jeez, I don't even...
Bounce lands, pain lands, 15 fetches.
Which is... I endorse. I think that one's... that's the real deal.
All the filters... all the tri-lands, all the original duels, all the new duels.
Man, there's Ravenous Baboons in this cube.
All the Innistrad duels, all the mainland duels.
Alright, there's a few.
Thawing Glaciers is in there, because why not? So there's just a lot. It's just a lot of dual lands. So you definitely need to be, cognizant of the fact that, like, hey, even though you're mostly green cards, you might end up with a bunch of other colors of cards you could play. Like, splashing is very easy in this cube, so keep your eyes peeled for stuff like that with this list. Is generally how I feel about it. But
it's a lot more even power level as well. I think we've mentioned that before, and that's why it's definitely creature based combat most of the time. It's not big combo decks or big control decks.
I mean, you can kind of go deep on the blue counterspells deck or things like that, but it's not common.
It's not as prevalent, and there aren't as many control cards.
Blue is definitely a lot more...
creatures are going to win 90% of the games in MTGO cube. With our cube, creatures probably win 60%. Close to 2/3.
Yeah. Cheap creatures are not always exactly where you want to
be. And even sometimes in our cube, the creature decks will end up decking one another.
That does happen.
You had that happen on yesterday.
Well, I was more of a control deck than a creature deck.
Your black-white deck from yesterday?
Yeah. My guys were like 5, 6s, and 7s.
Really? Oh.
It was like Nighthawk, Descendant of Kiyomaru, Blood Baron Obsidat, Angel of Serenity, Elishnorn. Those are like my only guys.
Wow. I felt like you were applying a lot of early pressure against me that I had to
I boarded it all in.
Oh, okay.
I had to like go
I
out
was
and
playing.
I was not starting. I was not starting Girls Messenger in my black-white deck.
You could.
I could.
You had the Fetid Heath.
And the Urborg.
And the Airborg. Which I don't remember. I never cast Sundering Titan in that match. Man. I was like, it could have been useful.
Anyway.
So that's our take on the MTGO Cube this time around. I think really, it's almost worth going back and looking at the older changes to be
like seeing
really
how it's
what
evolved over
happened.
time.
I'd like an article from somebody just being like, we took it back a step. This is why we took it back a step. Because I like it. I like it.
I mean, I would even accept like the stream of consciousness notes of the guy who makes these changes, or like an Instagrammed photo of the whiteboard where they write these suggestions. Like anything.
Sure. Too much information on there. It'll bleed
That
out.
is it.
Before we get to the main topic, we should cover M14 one last time.
Oh, do we want to go over the changes?
Yeah, we'll go...
Sure.
Because, again, like I think the last time we recorded, it was still... like there was we were at like 90% spoilers. Or we did the whole set?
We did the whole set. It doesn't... I mean... So anyway, so we have our...
Ultimately...
We have our changes list.
We, the way the process works for us, I'll usually mock up a quick proposed change list. I'll show it to the committee of elders, of the people that play the cube the most or are the most opinionated about it. There'll usually be a hem and a hahn. I think for Dragon's Maze, like we had a full blown sit down impromptu meeting, which was weird.
Yeah, that was too big.
Too big. This time around, I just kind of threw together the stuff that I thought was going to be exciting and be good talking points. And ultimately, nobody came back being like, I love this, I hate this, why is this not here, why is that there?
There are like 2 cards that I'm not... So, I think I mentioned this to you.
Out of the like 11 total we're changing.
Yeah, there's not a ton. There's like 2 cards, like one that I don't want to see go in and one that I don't want to see go out, and they're not even the same pairing.
Yep. Well, we'll hit them as we hit the list. So the first change that's going to be happening with Magic 2014 in our cube is Exalted Angel is finally being sent out to pasture to bring in the sexier, thinner, newer Archangel of Thune.
I feel bad. Exalted leaving is a timely reference here. It's like Mariano at the All-Star game last night.
Oh, wow. It's
sports, like the last...
Sports reference, hurrah. Right?
Yeah, it's like he gets to the solo entrance onto the field with no one out there. They get to play his theme, and he gets to stay to go. And then, rides off into the sunset, basically. So, Exalted Angel's just literally been there from day one. So, it's tough to see one of the original headliners kind of finally take a bow.
If I hadn't already made show notes for this week, next week what we'll probably end up doing is a little more in the age of the morph. We'll go back and talk about morph creatures in Cube, because this is one of the last. This is one of the stalwarts. Now, it was already a joke in the last half year to year of Cube. If someone plays a face down creature, you know what it is.
Yeah.
But with Exalted Angel leaving, it's just really all those times you don't have triple red for Blistering Firecat from here on out.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like we should put together some kind of teary-eyed montage, sad Exalted Angel tribute
Play
video.
some Celine Dion music or something.
But
on the flip
she'll
side,
give a speech next week at Cube League.
I mean, she's one of those few cards that also didn't have lifelink in any variety. So, even Hammer got the Oracle rules update because it was printed in 10th edition.
Right, but Exalted never did, so you could double up.
Right, which happened slightly less than the people that would die with her ability on the stack.
Yeah, that also happened.
Yeah, I mean, with playing with Exalted Angel, it was just, it was overcosted. The format sped up a lot. You can't just lay a Grey Ogre and turn it into Exalted Angel as often. And meanwhile, Archangel of Thune not only fits into the curve a little more aggressively, but opens up some new kind of interesting combo angles, which we're familiar with. We don't currently have Spike Feeder, although Spike Feeder has been in previous iterations of the cube. It may make a comeback depending on how well or not well Archangel is received. But this one was pretty easy to make. So long, Exalted Angel. We'll talk about you in future episodes.
Thanks for the memories. Never forget.
Next on the list,
we'll retire her jersey. We'll hang it up.
We do have the Judge one, and I don't know if that's even better or worse.
It's worse.
It's not like the classic
artwork.
Old,
yeah, you got the old school.
All right. So next on the list here, we've got the Descendant of Kimimaro test project, as I called it. It was one of those ones that the MTGO Cube made this choice. So I thought, we'll go along with it. And what ended up happening was every turn of every game, people would ask, how many cards are in your hand? How many cards are in your hand? And then that wasn't really fun. And we have an easy way to kind of swap it out here since we have Banisher Priest. who is another kind of 187 effect for the aggressive white decks. Now, there's a lot of talk because Banisher Priest doesn't allow you to exile your own guys to kind of protect it. But
so this was one of the two ones I didn't agree with.
Okay.
So I'm a Descendant of Kiyomaru apologist. Like,
what does that mean?
Means I am a defendant of the Descendant.
That's a way better quote.
Yeah. So I like it. I think we had this conversation. Descendant doesn't fit in every white deck because it very clearly wants to be in the control shell, but in the situations where you want it, it's much better than a card like Banisher Priest because the life gain from it is going to negate a much... Like, Banisher Priest negates one card from your opponent, like their creature in play. Like, you're very likely not blanking anything else in their deck. Whereas, if with Descendant, as long as you're playing control and you are ahead, like on cards, which is much easier for the control deck to do, 5 toughness plus gaining 3 life a turn is blanking a lot more of their deck all at once.
Interesting. I understood.
It doesn't fit everywhere. Like, lower ceiling, higher floor is how I look at it. It has more variance in terms of when it's good and where it's good, but I still really like it in the decks that want it. Banisher Priest, the fact that you can't get tricky with it, and the fact that, like, the Grey Ogre, meh. Like, it just...
Time and experience will tell. Banisher Priest, much like any faceless butcher type card, it's got that, it's fragile, like, it's not really a removal spell, it's very pseudo. But what I looked at it and liked about it was not only we get a little more redundancy on the Fiend Hunter effect, but we're also, adding more cards to the aggressive bottom of the curve white decks, and those could use a boost right now.
See, I don't think that Banisher Priest is a good add to the aggressive white deck because it costs 3 and is 2 power. Like, if you wanted an aggressive card, like for white beatdown decks, I would have put an Imposing Sovereign.
We may end up putting an Imposing Sovereign, but looking at Imposing Sovereign as worth the 2 drops in white on the creature side, I was actually very happy with, as opposed to the 3 drops in white where I was not as happy with it. This fork in the roads. That's why I gave Banisher Priest the nod. When it came to the 2 drops, I liked what Imposing Sovereign was bringing to the table, and I was like, you know what? We probably want to try this out at some point soon. But it gave me another opportunity to kind of revisit Blind Obedience that we had passed on previously. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this effect will be good. Blind Obedience seems like it would have a lot of more avenues or more areas it would have touch on. Like, the aggressive decks can still play it and curve out into it. If we have more cards like Banisher Priest, the control decks can kind of play it as a bit of a stall or a roadblock and then maybe use Extort as some kind of win condition. The aggressive decks may be able to cash in on Extort. Let's take that dive at this point. Let's figure it out one way or the other. So
I like it. I like Blind Obedience.
You like Blind Obedience with the hope of having it be in conjunction with Imposing Sovereign?
I just like Extort. I want more Extort in cubes. Like,
so you want to see Cynic of Tides? You want to see
Cynic of Tides? Definitely.
Something else.
There's just not that much great. Like,
and there's like
Tithe Drinker. Like, yeah. So the thing about I didn't intend to necessarily do this, but over the last several weeks in Cube, I've somehow become like the Orzhov Guild representative.
It'll come in waves.
Like,
you just happen to draft Black White 3 weeks in a row.
Everyone shits all over Orzhov all the time, and somehow I've ended up drafting like a 3-0 Orzhov deck, and then last week I 2-1'd, kind of 3-1'd, I played a 4th match. And what I've learned in playing those decks is that they're good, but really one of the most important things for the deck to really function is like constant life gain. Like, even at incidental levels. Like, things like the Obsidat gain life trigger, or random, like, Descendant of Kiyomaru gaining you life, or, like, random little life linkers and things like that are really, really good in that deck. Because it has so many ways to convert life into cards, or manage its life total in such a way as a better resource than any other color combination. So, like, Extort plays perfectly into that. Being able to just, like, drain on your spells to negate Phyrexian Arena, or buy you more time to set up your Wrath of Gods or your big dudes. It's really, really good. And I think that the fact that you also get to make guys come into play tapped to make their draws clunkier or screw up haste guys, things like that.
Completely really negate ball lightnings.
Well, one of the biggest Achilles heels of the black-white deck is haste guys like Firecat and Ball Lightning, because a lot of its removal of Wrath of Gods. Like sorcery speed, it's either Oblivion Ring or Vindicate or Wrath or Damnation. So being able to turn off your opponent's giant solar fuses so you can then blow them up on your turn is really, really, really good.
Okay, so ultimately, Blind Obedience coming into the cube, we're actually cutting Battle Screech this time around. It seems like we've had other opportunities to kind of play with tokens. There's a lot out there right now, and Battle Screech is probably the loosest overall of all of them.
It's definitely the slowest. It's very awkward when you can't flash it back.
Yeah, if you're top decking it, it's not. You'd pretty much rather have Spectral Procession in the middle of a game where the board is starting to get kind of gummed up. It's actually a better card because you're getting 4 flyers.
It is the top deck situation where it's like, all right, they wrathed. Battle Screech. I hope I draw another creature so I can not attack for a turn to put 2 more guys in play. Like, it's so clunky.
It's a back and forth kind of trade scenario. I don't think we're pushing Battle Screech out forever, but this is an opportunity to have Blind Obedience. And again, I think if Blind Obedience plays well, or if we see where it would have played well as a creature, that'll definitely give credence to Imposing Sovereign in the future. Although, without really thinking about it, this does pose a great question. And now, if you could have one or the other, would you want to add Imposing Sovereign or Syndic of Tides to the cube tomorrow?
That's a tough question. I'd have to think.
I don't know. I don't know if that made it out of the verses for this week.
I might have.
I don't remember.
I put them together and then hit myself in the head. So
time passed.
So moving on to black. Black's changes. Mercenary Knight is becoming Lifebane Zombie. I feel like that is a very fine choice. Lifebane Zombie is awesome.
I'm a big fan of that game.
I did not realize it was only green or white creature cards. I thought it was just any green or white card.
Okay.
So worse than I thought, still very good enough.
Okay.
Marsh Flitter, becoming Liliana's Reaver. I think this is fine. Both of them die to the same stuff, so I'm not necessarily worried about, fortitude, so to speak. Guys staying in play. They both die to Lightning Bolt, so I'm not necessarily concerned with that.
I just like the
upside on Liliana's Reaver is just insane.
It's another one of those creatures, and a lot of creatures have this in Cube where it's like you must block me or things just get out of hand. So against control decks, if you have the opportunity to play this on an empty board, they're really put on the back foot. Where Marsh Flitter against control decks is kind of like, okay, well, this may become a problem later. It's like swatting flies kind of at first. Not that it can't. And I think that there's versatility in the fact that it's making 3 permanents that can attack. Marsh Flitter has actually... It's done a decent amount of work since it's been in the cube, and it may find its way back in. Again, I feel we're at a point now with cube where we're not looking at cards to cut where it's like, oh, how'd we ever play this? Or I can't believe it's been in here for so long.
Ethereum Horncaster, why?
That was a complete... Well, yes, that is an example that you're talking about. That's just because cards had not been printed yet.
Right, yeah.
So Marsh Flitter, again, you're getting stuff done, you're a fine card. But there's another opportunity to swap for a more aggressively powered 4-drop. Death Touch could come into effect at some point. Definitely has to be blocked, so if you give it equipment or any kind of evasion, becomes very, very relevant. Making more zombies can also be very, very relevant.
I'm always a fan of anything that ups the zombie count.
Yeah, this one, I don't consider this, some cards adding to queue I think are home runs. I think Lifebane Zombie, Archangel of Thune, these are like across-the-board home runs. Like, you're going to see these cards in cubes. Cards like Banisher Priest and Liliana's Reaver are a little more like kind of choice or size dependent. Our cube is larger, we have more room to play with, so these cards are coming in. Again, M14 has been pretty low impact across the board for people, so because our cube is so large, we have the opportunity to even really kind of play with more of these cards.
Last change in black, Graveborn Muse for Shadowborn Demon.
We just don't have any 5-drops in black, so it was hard to make a straight swap here. And it almost seems like Graveborn Muse is getting slightly better. We just cut a Human Knight and a Fairy Rogue that makes goblins for 2 more zombies. But we want to add a little more diversity and another 1/8/7 effect, and Shadowborn Demon's a big...
Shadowborn seems awesome, and Graveborn Muse was always horrible.
Graveborn Muse was one of those rare cards where like the black mid-range decks would get a huge leg up against the non-red or white control decks.
Yeah,
which is a pretty narrow
that's
piece
a
of the
slim
pie.
wedge.
Yeah.
So Shadowborn Demon seems great. I have no problem with that.
We are supporting the Graveyard Matters,
Right.
Sacrifice Matters. This is a card, even when it was first previewed, we're like, hey, maybe this is going to help us kind of till that land for black and give it more.
The one we need to get a stricter handle on is Zathrid Necromancer.
That was actually mentioned in the chat.
Yeah.
That guy, we didn't crunch all the numbers on him, but just
Right. We need more time in the lab on that guy.
Yeah,
I feel. He's up in the list.
He was definitely up in the air with the proposals, but his act did get we're a little ahead of ourselves. But yes, he did. He won an argument, as it were. Shadowborn Demon. What were our closing thoughts on this guy? Oh, so we were talking about Zathrid Necromancer. Zathrid Necromancer?
Something like that.
Zathrid Necromancer.
Whatever.
He still looks like the Grey Ogre that makes another Grey Ogre. We'll have to check on because again, Black has been pushing so long and hard to get away from humans that
zombies have kind of taken over the black section.
Yeah, I mean,
Zathrid Necromancer is a white card, basically. Like, white is where all your incidental humans are.
Or blue nowadays. Or
just Delver.
No, they're more
Unflipped Delver.
Snappies and...
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
we'll crunch some more numbers. That might end up being some kind of weird combo card.
He's definitely on the high... Like, he's definitely in the highest chunk of, like, the bench list.
The other thing you can do with Shadowborn Demon, thank you, Sam, for all the people out there that have the army of Squadron Hawks and the army of Nissa's Chosens and such, you can always just add, a dozen Shadowborn Apostles to your cube, and you can either have
you
the
keep
claws.
On the side.
Oh, definitely.
So it's like Squadron Hawk, where if you draft one, you get the other three.
Yeah.
So, like, you draft the Shadowborn Demon, they give you, like, a pile of 10.
Yeah, Murray's cube goes real deep on that. He does that with Nissa Ravane and all these things.
Yeah.
So you could either have it where if you draft the demon, you get some Shadowborn Apostles, or if you can draft an Apostle, you could get a lot of Apostles, or you could just put 16 Apostles in your cube.
So
but there's one in every pack in place of a basic land.
So
moving down to red, we have the easiest change in all of the cube, and a lot of that came on the back of, again, all of our help that we can give to the Jockelhops Wildfire plan, and that was to switch Chandra for Chandra.
Yeah, Pyromaster just seems better than Firebrand. Forking was cool, but it came up very rarely. Yeah, I mean, this is fine.
It feels like there's not a whole lot to say here.
Yeah.
I think if there's a conversation to be had, it's more about, okay, Chandra Pyromaster.
If they ever print an interesting or good red Planeswalker, then we'll come back to it. But
well,
at this point, we're like riffing on the same thing.
Everyone in the Magic community wants to know, Chandra Pyromaster, what do you actually do? Because everyone keeps talking, and it's in this weird middle area where it's like, well, she really doesn't do anything. She doesn't draw a card. She just pings things. Oh, she's really she's like a Honden. She's like, draw a card every turn. That's really good.
No, it's not. Because if you...
I have no problem with this card, and we're playing
fine.
We are literally playing it in the format where it is the best.
It's fine.
We have Sylvan Libraries. We have Sensei's Divining Tops. We have Oracles of Moldiah.
No one is not saying it's not fine. No one is saying it's not fine. Okay. I'm just saying this is the boringest of all changes.
I'm just trying to help her out a little bit. Again, we played Chandra the Firebrand. We didn't play Chandra the Firebrand in Cube for a very long time. And what ultimately brought it in was the hope of helping out the Wildfire / Jockelhops plan. Which I gotta tell you, our spells you don't need to copy. And thusly, it also added another element of why are we bothering?
Yeah.
So that's that. Look for Chandra Pyromaster and us to have feedback on that in the near future.
Krenko Mob Boss is becoming young Pyromancer, one token maker for another.
A much cheaper one. Obviously more aggressive because it's much cheaper. A much more combo-oriented one. And doesn't look like a Hill Giant in Disguise one, which is really my favorite part about this whole thing.
Yeah, Krenko didn't really make a lot of tokens.
It's weird. Krenko...
we don't have... So, similar to the talk we just kind of had about Zathrid Necromancer, where, we need to do a human count. We put Krenko in without ever doing, a goblin count. And we have no, intentional goblin thematic. There's no...
Pile driver?
The War Chief, whatever. We're, we don't care if it's a goblin or not. There's no synergies there. Krenko was the only one. Incidentally, you could tap him for make 2 goblins instead of 1 because you play like a Ruin Blaster or whatever. But a lot of times he's just attacked for 3. Oh, I can't get through. I'll make a goblin. Now it'll die. The end. So Young Pyromancer has a much higher chance of impact, I think, both on the offensive and defensive side.
And it's just, we're slowly inching our way to adding cards like Empty the Warrens into the cube. And I know that might seem contradictory considering we just cut Krenko. But there's been a lot of talk recently.
Value Storm?
Yeah, I don't even like using the word Storm. I just like thinking of Value Warrens. I'd like to find a way to put a card like Empty the Warrens in the cube because red 4-drop spell. Red spells in general don't have a lot of modes. They don't really.
They do damage.
Yeah,
in some amount from 2 to 4.
They might destroy a land. They might destroy 2 lands. They might deal damage and destroy lands. That's all they do. And I felt a card like Empty the Warrens might give us more depth or bring us other things. But I didn't want to put it in the cube and then have people make really broad assumptions.
Yeah, Storm's online, slamming it.
So hopefully more cards like Young Pyromancer will just kind of tell people it's there's value in cheap spells. Maybe that's another angle kind of the red-blue decks can go down. So you're just, making...
cards like Young Pyromancer make compulsive research a lot less painful. Because, that deck doesn't want to tap out on its 3rd turn to not affect the board. Especially against aggressive decks.
Okay.
You're already facing down, a 2-drop and a 3-drop.
So now...
say you're on the draw, right?
So now you're looking at compulsive research also having, Healing Salve attached to it?
Right, you get a blocker.
Okay.
Draw some cards, get a blocker.
Okay.
Kill a guy, get a blocker. That's way, I think where that card will be best.
Yeah.
The fact that you can also go aggressive with it and, burn their blocker, get an extra attacker, is sweet because it goes both directions. Whereas Krenko didn't really go in any direction other than to your graveyard from play.
It wasn't that bad. I played it multiple times. I attacked with it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. The problem was every time I was attacking with it, I kept looking down and being like, gosh, my Hill Giant did cost me double red, didn't it? Well.
Canyon Minotaur is looking on from the sidelines what could have been.
Meh.
Werebear becoming Elvish Mystic.
Pretty standard.
Threshold was pretty hard to hit.
Yeah, we added Bizarre Baghdad, and I kept thinking, Werebear, those guys are going to be best of friends.
But there's no, we don't Tome Scour,
Werebear just kind of had this little bit of a bonus where it was okay, your Land War Elf cost twice as much.
But
if
on,
the game
turn
goes
12...
long, you might get something. We'd rather, if we can cheapen it up, we can make it more consistent. If we can make it an elf, everybody wins. And the green section, it's not as easy as you think. You can't just open it up and be okay, that guy's real loose, get out of here. You want to manage the curve. You want to manage what the cards do as much as possible.
That being said, however, we have cut one real loose one, and that was the next change, which is Vorpede for Colonian Hydra.
I think you're going to miss that Vorpede.
I am absolutely not going to miss that.
Have you ever cast Vorpede?
Yeah.
Ever?
Oh yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Horrible every time.
Okay, so Eck. He may have beaten me into submission a little bit on this one. I still think the Hydra has a lot to prove, but
that's fine.
Vorpede is triple green.
Vorpede had its time in the show, and it did not batting 140 on the season.
I don't know. I liked the fact
that Hydra is killing it at AA ball. All right.
Sure, I think you're getting looser on the references. And
sorry, I've been thinking a lot about baseball.
Try to hold it together, but. I think there were a couple other nominees for cards we could have cut instead of Vorpede, although I'm blanking on them in the moment.
Well, the issue was mostly curve based.
I don't think it was curve as much as casting cost. I think the fact that the ultimately triple green is what kind of I was okay, I'll back it off a little bit here. We don't play pod, right. Which Vorpede would be excellent with.
Sure.
The green decks, they kind of the ramp ones, the one that have no problem getting a million green. Usually skip 4 and 5, and they're trying to
just go straight to 7.
Yeah, they do. They go 1, 2, 6, big time. And where the Hydra just can play better in a curved out aggressive deck, where Vorpede does a lot of different things. You almost want it in a mid range control strategy, but those decks don't have triple green casting costs in them for the most part.
Wildfire. Oh, that's a Vorpede.
Before Pete got better with Wildfire. We'll see how it goes. I think at the end of the day, my only downside is that I can't believe how popular this stupid card is.
Right.
So it's like such a pain in the butt.
I'm telling you, baby. Exava Blood Witch into Collodion Hydra with Corpsejack Menace in that deck too. Book it.
I just keep
that is going to be a derpy standard deck, I guarantee it.
All right, well,
Jund +1/+1 counter.
For the last 5 years of Magic, anytime a Hydra was printed in a set, let alone a core set, it would be a $3 to $4 mythic that would eventually gain some value over time. This guy comes out as like the first most expensive card in the whole set.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on here? So, chat has had some things to say here.
They're mostly positive about me.
Well, then I'll let you take care of that later.
So the last thing in our changes, the other card I was sad to see go was Mask of Memory being replaced by Haunted Plate Mail. Now, Haunted Plate Mail, the reason I'm okay with this is because I really wanted Haunted Plate Mail in. I'm just sad that it had to be Mask of Memory that took the bullet.
You can look at all the equipment you want. It's the first one to get cut.
It's just so, it's a bummer. Because I really like Mask.
I really like Mask, too. There are literally thousands of Magic cards I like that we don't play with every week.
Yes.
This is going to be one of them.
Haunted Plate Mail seems very good.
I'm excited to see people, pay full price and put it on a guy. Just because I think that's limited Magic. And
the fact that you could put it on a guy or, you wrath me? Get in there,
exactly.
Crush you.
Exactly.
You could still play a dude after combat with it. It's a fine guy to go get with Stoneforge Mystic. Because why not?
Yeah, it's the poor man's Batterskull, as we've
I think it's fine. I think that control decks are going to want it. It's sweet and Oath.
Another great card for Oath. I think we've good memory refresher right there.
So
you get to play an equipment in your Oath deck.
Slap that bad boy on Batterskull.
Although you'd play Mortarpod in your Oath deck, and you'd probably play Batterskull in your Oath deck.
Not Batterskull, I meant Blightsteel classes.
Yeah, sure, relevant.
Well, yeah, they got blockers. You can trick over.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, that's the entirety of the changes for M14. Not super extensive, pretty safe for the most part. There's a few that definitely could go either way, but...
But, Eck, why no slivers?
Because slivers are stupid.
That's not an answer.
Okay, you're stupid. How about that?
That's closer to an answer, but that's still not an answer.
Slivers are imagine Tolarian Academy. The card where either no one wants it, or one guy wants it and makes it unfun. Now you have to put 60 of them in your cube. You can't put one sliver. You have to put them all.
But Eck, didn't M14 have 5 or 6 good slivers on their own that we could consider adding to cube?
Sure. Now we can make a 5-color aggro deck that won't come together a lot, that requires a bunch of 15th picks.
And sometimes we play heads up, so it's even worse. To address the sliver thing, because again, in this particular core set, we didn't get a Scry, we didn't get a Blood Rush, we didn't get an Exalted, we got slivers. And if that's your main focal point of the set, how does it translate to cube? It's the thing that the set is. There's got to be some powerful cards there. We did a sliver talk a few episodes back where we discussed, pre M14, what slivers we want to include. Put in the cube, and the list was a little too short. And again, they have to stand on their own. They can't be all necrotics. They can't all be gem hides.
If you have to play a bunch, you have to play all 3 of the muscle slivers. If you were to
add the M14s,
if you have to play Gale Rider.
Gale Rider?
The 1-mana flying one.
Oh, that's what that thing's called?
Yeah, Gale Rider sliver.
Right.
So right there, I just named 4 cards, which is Flying Men, Grizzly Bears, Silver Coat Lion, Grizzly Bears. Okay. Those are 4 cards you are willingly adding to your cube.
Some cubes do play Flying Men.
They're wrong.
They're not wrong. They're just doing something different.
I just think, I could understand slivers. So, the one place I think it would be okay and be interesting is if you can go really, really deep on it, and, if you have, you have the room or you have the desire to play all of them. And you also have enough mana fixing to make it work.
See,
because you have to have, every color has at least one sliver that you actively want.
Right. Hopefully. You're doing it wrong, except for red, maybe.
No, Thorncaster?
All right.
So
in the new school, that one's actually good. See, here's I like to go to this analogy, and it should really kind of explain this whole thing perfectly. If the cube was 3,000 cards, if I want to put some slivers in there, it'd be fun.
Except you couldn't, because at 3,000 cards, there aren't enough playable slivers to get enough density of them to make a deck.
Exactly. So even at 700 cards, there isn't enough of them to go around to even be good. Sure, we doubled up on Gemhide.
That tribal cube list that I've talked about wanting to make, that the 5-color tribe would be slivers in my head.
Oh, okay. We're getting pretty close to just making a list for that.
I know.
I talk about it enough at this point.
I think about it at work. I'm like, oh, that would be cool.
So it's
what
like
would the tribes be?
So it's like merfolk, goblins.
I'll show you the map.
Elves.
I drew a picture.
Now, would you do it where like each monocolor would have a tribe, and then each 2-color combination would also have a tribe?
Oh, we're going real deep. Don't worry.
Whoa!
We've got the whole map.
Because you got to make it as diverse as possible. I don't want to like take Merowigery first pick. This isn't my problem with tribal cubes. It's
right,
like,
your first pick like locks you into what you're doing,
or it's a complete throwaway. Like one of two things happens. Like either it was a complete waste, or it's the deck.
Right.
Like, oh, I opened the Merowigery. Like, I'm just gonna take every merfolk that comes by, and that's my deck. Like,
No, I think I've been thinking about it.
As long as we can include like cats and tree folk, and giants. I'm just trying to think of like 2-color tribes.
You picked some bad. First of all, you picked at least one 3-color tribe, and then some bad ones that are monocolored. Cats is 1 color. Tree folk is 3.
Have you played the Ajani deck from Ajani versus Bolas?
No. Why would I do that?
If you have, you'd see if there's a lot of cats out there.
Fire cats.
The kids love cats. There could be a humans. That would probably be like that. Wouldn't know. Because blue white would be
elves, humans, merfolk, goblins. Slivers would be like the 5-color. Beasts, zombies.
Beasts. So beasts is red green.
So there's a color.
Or you could do them by like guilds. Like that's beast is Gruul.
Yeah.
And Boros would be giants.
Right.
And Dimir would be
zombies.
All right, I'm with you.
Golgari is elves.
Okay. You don't want trees?
No, you don't like Ibelites ending like.
I like that Thorncaster Witch from Lorwyn. The 6-mana tree. Whenever you cast a tree, something gets +3/-3.
Yeah. Good. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. Anyway, we're getting like well off topic, and this is still something very deep in the lab. So shall we get to our main?
It's all main topics.
It's all main topics.
We've covered M14 to exhaustion at this point. I don't think we'll be coming back to the sliver population or anything unless it's by extreme request.
And now it's time for card fights, round 2. We did this one of our first episodes. Heads up card matchups. Some of these are in cube, some of these are not in cube. Disclaimer: these are not changes we are actively making. These are merely talking points, but they may be changes in the future.
You will remember Demon Fire versus Devil's Play from a show long ago
that eventually came to fruition.
Great impact. This is pretty much this is the kind of the basic. This will always happen, if we're between sets, if we're just like at a draft or like looking at a card, being like, if it was only this other card, and we're like, well, maybe we should consider that seriously. So card fights is pretty much just like, I want to get rid of this card, or I want to add this card. Like, how do we match it up against each other? You try to find a card that's about as close as you can get in cube as you could see cutting.
I mean, the goal in cube is always to have like the strictly betters. Like, why are we playing this? This other one is strictly better.
Right.
Like, so that's a lot of what.
But it's magic, so that never really happens.
It does happen sometimes.
Let's begin today's card fights, or the Versus series. First up, and this was a big one on Twitter that I got a lot of responses from, and a lot of both sides of the argument. We've got Hornet Queen, Avenger of Zendikar. Which one would you prefer if you could only have one in your cube?
We have never had Hornet Queen, and I think I want to try it.
Ooh.
Because, like, we just put Momentary Blink in, and that's really exciting.
I love Revelark.
Flying in green, which is a rarity. Mm-hmm. All that Death Touch is sweet. And Revelark. Like, this thing has a lot going for it, that makes it interesting.
You didn't even mention Death Touch, which is a real big game here.
Yeah.
If this was just a 2/2 flyer that made 4 more 1/1 flyers for 7 mana...
Not to mention, Skull Clamp, any kind of Pomp, Mirror Entity, whatever. Like...
there's a good sliver.
Mirror Entity is a good sliver.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going, as potentially bomby as Avenger is, Hornet Queen is just stellar.
It almost seems like it's weird because you consider both these cards kind of army in a cans, but Hornet Queen is much more the army in a can. I think with Avenger of Zendikar,
you can cheat it.
Not only cheat it, but if your opponent has the removal spell,
sure,
they're going to have an opportunity to leave you with a bunch of O1s that too often don't impact the board, where with Hornet Queen, there is no opportunity to do that. She's going to have an impact.
You could also, reanimating Avenger of Zendikar, or it is very awkward and or bad.
So the genesis of this versus was that there was a kid who was drafting Oath, and that kid, he's a good kid. Chase is his name, actually.
Yeah.
He had a spectacular deck yesterday. But he drafted Oath, and I watched him Oath into Avenger on, turn 4, and it was not so hot. And I kept thinking, I was like, if that was just a Hornet Queen, that'd be pretty good, actually. I mean, sure, your opponent triggers Oath now, it's a little awkward.
But you death touch whatever they get.
Yeah, and you're still probably attacking for 4 or 5 in the air. You're doing something. That Avenger was more of just a bad roadblock. It just kind of made me think, which is more fragile. With the ramp strategies, with the making land drops kind of thing, Avenger probably has a lot more upside potential in the long run. Its reach is larger. But Hornet Queen, if you're playing small ball, if you're cheating it, if you're reanimating it, maybe it's better. So my jury's still pretty out on this matchup right here. I'm not saying I definitely want this one 6-7 days of the week over the other one, but I'd be willing to try out Hornet Queen in the near future.
Next fight, Rampaging Balos versus Primeval Titan. Go.
So this was an extension of this conversation where landfall, land drops really matter. It kind of blended in with us finally adding a green 6-drop to the cube in the form of Primeval Titan after having this long history of it's not very good, this is going to get a bunch of non-basics that don't do anything anymore, you don't have the Valakut combo, so wouldn't you rather just make 4/4s? I've been surprisingly okay with Primeval Titan. I've actually watched it go...
It's still a 6/6 for Cramp with Trample.
I've actually watched it go and grab a township or a wolf run in the recent past and have that be good.
Those things happen.
Yeah.
I'm just... we had this conversation on Twitter, and I came rushing to the aid of Rampaging Balos, which is the side I'm taking in this fight, by the way.
Okay.
So far, I am team left side of the graphic. So my argument with Rampaging Balos versus Primeval Titan is typically both of these cards exist in the green ramp deck, right? Rampant Growth, Harrows, Kadama's Reaches, etc., etc. With those cards in your deck, Primeval Titan's trigger not only becomes less relevant because you have more ways of getting lands into play, but its trigger also makes those cards worse. Because you're either going to run out of targets or, the impact of getting, your 9th and 10th lands is not nearly as important, right? Whereas with Rampaging Balos, unless you have, an Eldrazi to ramp into, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Whereas with Rampaging Balos, it's still good with ramp because you want to get it out faster, but it makes your Rampant Growths and Harrows better once it's in play, because all of a sudden, now you're, Rampant Growth on turn 8, at the very least, makes you a 4/4.
You're not fixing at that point. You're not accelerating into something. And too often you're just thinning your deck by a card. I see the argument for Rampaging Balos. I think you've kind of brought it all together. At the same time, what would you pay for a 6/6 trampler that cast Mana Severance on your deck and made it so you didn't draw any more lands for the rest of the game? I think that's a relevant question to ask as well. If Primeval Titan is doing nothing other than getting lands out of your deck so you don't draw them anymore, you're not ramping anything, you don't have a Wolf Run to activate.
Okay. Conversely, how much would you pay for a 6/6 trample that Mana Severance to your deck and replaced those lands with 4/4s that cost 0 mana?
Okay. Well, I think we're at an impasse here. We're not going to get any further. I guess the last talking point would be Primeval Titan. As soon as you cast it, you're going to get value out of it. Rampaging Balos, as soon as you cast it, you aren't necessarily going to get value out of it. Do you want instant gratification, or do you want potential more long-term upside? You want potential more long-term upside.
Without having, Township, Wolf Run, specific lands which you're not always going to have. You cannot rely on having them. the value you get from going to 6 to 8 is very largely irrelevant, especially in a deck that is likely filled with a bunch of rampant growths.
I don't know. It could be filled with anything. Could be a boat.
Could even be a boat.
I think we will stay split on this one. Primeval Titan will continue his reign in cube as the 6-drop. Rampaging Baloth is waiting in the wing. I like how it's like right side incumbent, left side challenger is kind of how we've got this set up. Except for here,
here where there's
neither of these cards exist.
So,
this is actually a talking point about Storm. We've talked about Empty the Warrens and how that might do enough on its own. This particular matchup, I don't think it's quite the same.
Opportunity versus Mind's Desire.
And ultimately, this kind of boils down to...
I want to pick the versus symbol in the middle of this graphic.
Mind's Desire, is it so narrow that you have to just put all these things around it? And at the end of the day, would you just be better off having a draw for it?
Like value Mind's Desire?
You still have to pay for your spells.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not... Like, if your deck is like Mind's Desire into Emrakul, and Emrakul is in your cube because
you can... very lucky.
Because you can also Eureka it, or sneak attack it, or all these things. Like that's where the intersect. That's where the pot.
I agree with Sam here, where it's opportunity and it's not close, but I don't want either. Like, opportunity does something, my desire doesn't do anything,
and that's really
but opportunity doesn't do enough to warrant an inclusion.
That's what I'm getting at here. A lot of people.
This is like D F minus.
Okay. Well, let's not bury the lead here. Mind's Desire, it's too much work. It's too many narrow... like, if Slivers is too much work, it's very similar in too much work, because you need to jam a bunch of cards, it always reminds me of all these times that Zach's like, dude, just add, Desperate Ritual, Pyretic Ritual, we'll just put all these cards in the
no
queue.
problem. Yeah.
Someone will take them.
Yeah, easy game. Just put 3 rituals in there and you're done.
At the end of the day, any cube that's running Mind's Desire, I'd probably just want Opportunity. It's even an instant. You can just leave your counterspells up.
You can even target them.
And win the game by decking them.
Definitely has happened. Yeah. Edric, Spymaster of Trest versus Mystic Snake.
Yeah, if you only get one.
So, if you only get one, I think I'm going Edric here. And I think, as I love Mystic Snake, and I love guys like Mystic Snake, my problem with it is it's a lot like the conversation we had about Plasm Capture, which is...
You're starting to telegraph it.
It's really hard to hold up 4 mana for all the game, especially when it's green, blue, X. Like, you see it coming, like, kind of from a mile away. And Edric has just always been... every time that guy hits the board, not only is he demand immediate responses from your opponents, but he always, vastly changes the way the game is being played. Edric is awesome. He plays great in blue decks that can defend him, and he plays great in green decks where you can slam him with a bunch of mana elves or tokens and just crash for a ton and draw 7.
Yeah,
he's even an elf, so he gets bigger with
Imperious Perfect.
Imperious Perfect.
I hate to cave so quickly, but I think you're right here. I think the challenger would beat the incumbent in this particular set of scenario or set of circumstances. Mystic Snake, a long time cube card, one of those.
And again, this is not necessarily we're cutting one of these cards. This is just...
Well, we play 700, so we actually play both. But if the cube was to go down to 540 tomorrow,
right,
we'd have to cut one of these cards.
Of these two, I would cut Snake, just because...
Life's all about killing your babies.
It's very good, but Mystic Snake is just... you can see it coming from too far away for it to be really great.
So good with Ether Vial. Edric, it opens up so many other avenues, which Eck was saying in the lead. I think that ability, that power, that different angle of attack, especially for all these elf decks, where it's you can't always find your swords, your warhammers, your equipment to kind of boost them. Edric comes at it from a different angle.
Having other things that make your army of random dorks better is always good.
Heaven forbid you have the opposition deck.
Flinthoof Boar versus Wild Mongrel.
This is a good one.
Ding, ding, ding.
I like this one. Talk about 2 cards I really don't care about.
Yeah.
Recently we cut Wild Mongrel from the cube, and there was talk where, should we have, is it worthwhile? If you were going to cut it, what should you be cutting it for in the form of a 2-drop? So your new school card, the guy that's really cutting things up here, is Flinthoof Boar. He's the 3/3 for 2. He's the Haster 3/3 for 3. He's in green. He's another Wild Nacatl friend.
My thing about Flinthoof Boar is that very rarely am I in a deck that wants that. Like, I'm not dismissing the power level of it, but like...
I think you are, because you're saying you never draft the deck.
Well, there's just not a aggressive base green deck.
Sure there is.
We cut all of the jungle lines.
If that's your metric for what an aggressive green deck is, then okay, yes, there isn't.
That's what I'm talking about.
In a cube that was populated by the Wild Nakatos, the Jungle Lions, the Kurt Apes.
Sure. Like,
is that the home for Flinthoof Boar? Or is Flinthoof Boar so interchangeable with all these cards it doesn't really matter?
I think if you have an aggressive slant in your green section, then Flinthoof Boar becomes very good. Because Flinthoof Boar is very powerful. I'm not saying it's not powerful. I'm not saying it's not more powerful than Wild Mongrel. I'm saying in our cube, we do not have a aggressive green strategy. It just doesn't exist. So, it just wouldn't have a home. But if you're playing Kurt Ape, Wild Nacatl, Loam Lion, etc., 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 then Flinthoof Boar becomes much, much better. And if you have Gazban, Ogre, Wild Dogs, whatever, Flinthoof Boar becomes much, much, much better because that kind of card fits much better in those decks.
So let's craft a world here where you're playing in a cube that has Jungle Lion, Pouncing Jaguar, Gazban Ogre, Wild Dogs, and you're posed with this. You're building a cube from scratch.
Yeah,
You've decided to add all those cards.
It is Snap Flinthoof Boar.
Okay.
Without question.
So really what this boils down to is it's the death of the dog. Old Yeller, the story of Wild Mongrel is what I'm seeing right here. Like, this card is just, it's past his prime. Yeah. One of the best 2-drops in all of Magic, pre-Goyf.
Like 6 years ago.
More than 6.
Yeah.
A decade ago is finally being put out to pasture. It's just not going to have a chance.
The dog's day has been gone for a while.
It's not enough of a reanimator enabler. It's not enough of a it's black, it can dodge.
Like, pitching your hand to hit them for 4 isn't good enough anymore, and saving your 2/2 isn't worth it either.
Yeah. Hopefully the cards in cube are worth a little bit more than like, you try to lightning bolt my guy? I'll save him.
Yeah, like that's the.
So that's really the lesson I learned there. I think that I hate to see Wild Mongrel go. And we're not adding Flinthoof Boar tomorrow, but we've cut Dog, and before Wild Mongrel makes a comeback, it'll probably be Flinthoof Boar.
Sure. Terminus versus Winds of Wrath.
Winds of Wrath. Easy move.
Terminus. Easy move.
Tell me more.
See this right here? This 3 white. There are 80,000 of these Wraths.
No, there aren't. There are like 6.
That's so many. You can always have more of them.
I'll tell you what there's way more of, and that's Wraths that cost 6. Every set.
I'll tell you what there aren't any of, and that's Wraths that cost 1.
Terminus is super exciting. Miracle cards in general are super exciting. If we could play every Miracle card in the cube, it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't necessarily be good, but it wouldn't be bad. Because a few things are more exciting, and I think Rosewater covered this in one of his podcasts. What is it?
Yeah. I mean, Terminus is just... Also, putting creatures on the bottom of libraries is very often relevant.
Take that, Strangleroot Geist.
Take that, regenerating, take that...
You can regenerate through this bad boy.
Unless they have... Oh, well, okay. It does destroy creatures with enchantments on them.
Which you can use to your advantage.
Sure.
With all of your positive auras.
Like,
we used to, back in the day...
I would rather have Hallowed Burial than Winds of Wrath, and I would rather have Terminus than either.
Interesting.
Like, Winds of Wrath is so unexciting.
Interesting. I'm a Winds of Wrath fan.
I know you are.
Okay. We play both. I don't think either is getting cut anytime soon.
We also play Route.
We do play Route.
Like, how often...
I would cut Route before I cut Winds of Wrath.
Like, how often do those cards just not see play? The answer is a lot.
If they don't see play, it's because the white drafter that they end up in front of is drafting a deck that plays too many creatures. It's like everyone that comes to a tournament with a white weenie deck with like Wrath of Gods in their main deck or Day Judgments in their main deck or whatever.
So this week I played 6 creatures in a white-black deck and shipped every 5-mana Wrath I saw and took Terminus. Like,
in the match I watched you play that had Terminus in it, though, you could have cast Winds and have it been just as effective, if not more effective.
Okay.
You ended up. That was the game you decked the guy.
You didn't see the game where I Miracle Terminus to get 3 guys on turn 3.
Okay.
Like, Terminus is just much higher upside than all of these dirtily 5-mana Wraths. Like, That's all there is to it.
I like Terminus. I like Miracle cards.
I like both these cards. Enclave Cryptologist versus Looter Ilkor.
Looter Ilkor.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was a fast agreement. Now, there has been a lot of chatter recently about adding Enclave Cryptologist, and I think this card is pretty bad. It takes a lot of resources.
Says the champion of Phantasmal Bear.
But that's different.
Right.
It's entirely different.
That was entirely a goal to make blue worse.
Enclave Cryptologist is a mana sink to make a looter, in my opinion. While Looter Ilkor is an excuse to loot while also attacking with a sorted creature.
Right. I mean, like, believe me, I like Looter Ilkor a lot. I think it's one of the best looters because you get to loot while attacking and wearing equipment.
I'll tell you what's surprisingly awkward. Not a May.
Right. Not a May and can never block, which does, like, Thought Courier does occasionally jump in front of the bus, which Looter does not do.
And
however,
Enclave Cryptologist could do.
Right. However, Looter Ilkor, like, wears all the pants in the world and it's awesome.
And it does cost twice as much mana. I mean, we can't just hold it on the same merits being like, well, it's so much better. Well, it's also twice the price.
Yeah. I mean, like, technically, if you really want to get to looting, like, you are playing the dedicated, like, Reanimator deck, you need to discard cards. Enclave Cryptologist comes online a turn sooner. Potentially, like, if you go turn 1 Cryptologist, turn 2 level.
In the hope of a turn 3 Gristlebrand with this play. No, you'd still have a turn 3 one. He attacks on turn 3.
Yeah, but if you have, like, if you have a way to give Gristlebrand haste, attack on turn 3, but you couldn't do that.
Okay.
I think Cryptologist is fine. I would rather have this than Phantasmal Bear, and I would rather have this than Delver, but I would not rather have it than Looter Ilkor.
I think the reason Cryptologist is fine is because there's nothing else to choose from. Like, your options are already so limited with blue creatures that cost less than 3 mana.
I agree with you. But I think that, like, Cryptologist, like, even outside of that vacuum, is still sweet. Like, you will get to 3 levels with this guy pretty often.
I mean, that's one thing. The blue control decks. I'd rather have it. Someone questioned the sanity of other things in the chat here. That's a conversation for another day. There, I disagree with Eck on the blue aggressive front. But
what blue aggressive front?
Exactly. So okay. So a point in the corner of Enclave Cryptologist is. The blue control decks don't look at this as a 1-drop. They look at it as a, slow overtime investment, almost a card with suspend that unfortunately stays in play that can be targeted. But you leave your counter spells up, and all that extra mana over the extra turns of all the things that you've got the game on lockdown. You're looking for the closer. You can level up to eventually build an Arcanist or an Archivist. Sorry, as where you don't want to pay 4 mana up front for an Archivist. So that, I understand that, but that's not really an aggressive, like, I need to play this on 1, which is what,
No, you don't have to
what's the whole point of having a 1-drop? Like, if saying Enclave Cryptologist is really, like, a slow blue card...
Blue just doesn't give a shit about its 1-drops. Like, who cares that doesn't have turn 1 dudes to play? Like, that's just irrelevant.
Alright. Like, I mean, we agree Looter Ilkor.
Yeah, I'm not, like, that's the thing. I agree Looter Ilkor. But I think Enclave Cryptologist is better than cards currently in Cube right now.
Oh. Alright, who's your cut then?
Phantasmal Bear.
Okay. Alright. Noted in the log.
Divine Deflection versus Rootborn Defenses.
We switched this one up. So the incumbent's not on the right here. But for the listening audience, it doesn't matter.
I'm Divine Deflection. That card is awesome.
Tell me more.
Remember that time we tied?
Okay, yes, I remember that time we tied.
That was sweet.
Okay, my problem with Divine Deflection is that it's think of the Plasm Capture thing, only it's not colored mana. You're telegraphing a trick or a line of play pretty clearly with this card.
I think you're doing that with both cards. 3 is a lot to keep up in an aggressive deck.
Okay. But Rootbound Defenses can be used, I think, in a lot of different ways. I think the Rootbound Defenses can be it can be a counterspell to a Wrath of God. It can be all your guys get first strike on defense for your blocking. Divine Deflection for 2 often isn't as good as Rootbound Defense as the Magic card.
I think that this effect, the Divine Deflection effect, the damage redirection, is sorely underrated. I am a huge fan of Shining Shoal. I am a huge fan of Divine Deflection. I'm a huge fan of Harm's Way. I like all those cards. I think that the swing that you get out of, switching around a lightning bolt, can be so. It seems very inconsequential at times, like doing it for 2 or whatever, but like it can also be very, very backbreaking. And one of the nice things about it too is that Divine Deflection kind of gives white decks reach. If that makes any sense. Like, you just smash your team into theirs, and whichever their biggest guy blocks, you just redirect their combat damage back to their face. Like, you get through for more. You, like, turn their own best guy against them in that way.
Making your guys unblockable, or kind of like white fireballing at instant speed, or, just like going into a race situation knowing that you're going to win. These things all make sense, and, Divine Deflection's in the cube. It's getting the job done in that regard, but does Rootborn Defenses offer you more avenues, different angles, ways you're just not having access to in cube, and ultimately can it do more than Divine Deflection? And you're saying no.
I think that this really comes down to what is a bigger problem for your aggressive white X decks. Wrath of Gods or damage in general. And typically speaking, I feel like damage is more common. Because a number of sweepers are damage based, Fire Spout, Wildfire, what have you. But also just there are just so many more instances, turning around a Searing Spear, turning around whatever, messing with an Electrolyze, messing with combat damage is just like so often, especially because like Divine Deflection is really at this point the only instance of this affecting cube. Players don't really plan for it at all. Like,
yeah, you do have that. I mean, when I say you're telegraphing a trick, your opponent isn't usually sitting there being like, oh, I know it's Divine Deflection.
Right.
It's just more like he actively hasn't cast anything for a few turns, and he's been attacking fairly recklessly.
I mean, I think that leaving up all your mana sends a different signal than leaving up specifically 3 of your mana.
Yeah. It just makes your opponent even that more cautious.
Or, like, depending on the Divine Deflection clearly is better in a deck that has Flash Guys or counter spells, other things to do with your mana, so it's less obvious. I will give you that. But Rootborn Defenses it seems kind of like just a little bit weird and clunky. And
we haven't even talked about what could we be populating.
Sure.
Are we just making another Sorin Vampire token? Are we just making another Spirit token off of Lingering Souls?
We don't have Advent of the Worm. We don't have Voice of Resurgence right now, so we can't make that token.
But even thinking about the future, I mean,
sure,
attacking with a Geist-Sustained Draft while holding Rootbound Defenses is pretty good.
Populate will only get better as they print more cards that make tokens. Like, that's just how any mechanic
Progenitor Mimic.
That's just how any mechanic like that works. So, yes, over time, populating will be better than this because they'll print a card that costs 2 mana and puts a 6/6 token into play or whatever, 10, 15 years from now. But I think right now, I would rather be deflecting than defending.
And I guess the chat kind of also pointed this out. When we don't have Refraction Trap or Harm's Way or the more popular Shining Shoal at this time, I didn't really like the card disadvantage potential of Shining Shoal and the fact that it's, you're hopefully playing a white aggressive deck, so best case scenario, you're sitting on your...
You're doing it for 4.
You're sitting on your like, Spectrum Procession. If we're going to go, like, Dream scenario.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but you're, like, still tapping out for all your guys.
Right, but the card advantage also, like, really negates that card
and
being
it's double white
good.
when you're going to cast it, as where, like, any of the other decks in Magic can find a white source for Divine Deflection. You hope that it's going to be on the level of, like, Path to Exile or Swords. Well, it's not, but...
Divine Deflection also functions as quasi-removal, in the non-aggressive
That's
deck.
just
Like, oh, you're attacking me with a 3/3, now it's dead.
Yeah, Super Fog.
Like, Fog kill your guy is also good.
I think Root Bound Defenses is
like,
worth coming back to at some point in the future.
Sure.
I think that card can do a lot more, but you have a compelling argument for Divine Inflection. It will stay in the cube.
This is where I remember this from. Clash of Youth versus Syndic of Tithes.
Well, there it is right there. So I guess that would have meant that Cloistered Youth would have been the card to be cut for imposing Sovereign. I like the beatdown, and no one sees the Cloistered Youth as a problem.
I like the Syndic of Tithes because I like the reach in white.
I just look at that card and I just see Grizzly Bears.
I look at this card and I see like bad, like bigger Carnophage that is also slower. Like neither of those are necessarily very impressive. I think that.
So you're squarely Syndic.
Yes.
And
if we could make this change, I would do it right now.
Pretty squarely Cloistered.
If you were holding a foil Syndic of Ties, I would go downstairs, get the cube, rip up the Cloistered Youth, and put it in.
Wow, it's a good thing about holding it.
Right.
It's a good thing it's sitting in a binder somewhere else.
Right.
Jeez.
So, like, I want more Extort in the cube, and I think this is a perfect place to put it.
Well, we'll see how the Blind Obedience test works. I don't know if Cloistered Youth is really the first 2-drop to get picked off. Apparently, when we were discussing these...
The fact that it's not a white 3/3 when it flips makes it so much worse. Like, you're already very vehemently trying to defend Honor of the Pure and Crusades slots in cube because they so rarely work. And then one of your 2-drops doesn't work with them.
But it dodges Vendetta. Snuff out.
Like, yeah, you kind of showed off there a little bit, buddy.
Go for the throw.
Yeah. Anyway, that is a change I would stop.
So you think? I mean, really spend more than 10 seconds on this. You think that the fact that you're losing a power and a toughness,
don't care,
is gained back, and maybe more, by the fact that all your spells now have Sphere of Resistance on them for Drain of Life?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I would do this in a heartbeat.
Time will tell. We'll see if Blind Obedience does anything. I don't know.
I mean, Blood Obedience doesn't attack for 2, which is relevant. Jarmar's Charm versus Esper Charm. I'm not even sure why this is a fight. This is like Mike Tyson versus a small child.
Who's what's the name of the guy in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out?
Oh, Glass Joe?
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say the guy you play as, but okay. That's your name?
Whatever.
You don't like draw 2, discard 2, sometimes destroy your very problematic enchantment because there isn't that much enchantment destruction?
Esper Charm is fine, but Jarmar Charm is like pretty much the best mode you could ask for this casting.
The Nut Charm.
Like it's the best charm by a wide margin. Like
poor Esper.
Unconditional counterspell. Kill a god, gain life. Like, oh man, Jarmar's Charm is not coming out for a long time. Like things would have to go very weird in Magic for this to not be the Nut Esper Shard charm.
Or the best charm.
Yeah, the best charm.
This is the best charm.
Yeah. I think this is
it's kind of a travesty of the game that Esper Charm is in the 90th percentile of charms.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of upstaged.
Like, Esper Charm is very good, but it's just like, you are a very inferior counterpart to your old frame.
Instant speed discard.
Like, yeah, sure. This is an interesting one. Kagamaru First to Suffer versus Blood Gift Demon.
This one is tough.
Fight.
I think I want Kagamaru. No, I'm not sure.
So, both of these cards have been in at times. Neither are in right now. Neither of them have been what I would consider stellar. And which is why they're not in right now.
I mean, obviously we take Shadowborn Demon over either of these cards. So
that's not even a discussion.
That close.
I want to say Blood Gift Demon because I like drawing cards. I want both these to play at the same time. That's what I want.
Maybe. Then it becomes like a weird 3-for-3 or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like draw a card, make a guy big. So the problem with Kagamaru in the past was that it wouldn't... You're not casting it in the middle of a control match when your hand is full to have it be a sweeper, which is what it's supposed to be.
Very much, too often Kagamaru was a 2/2 or something, and it was just like, well, this sucks.
And you didn't
kill anything.
You're casting.
Damage doesn't even stack anymore, so it's even worse.
a 6 mana infest on a guy.
Yeah, Decree of Pain is like, dude, bro.
Where Kagamaru was really good was either in blue control decks or in the like Corpse Dance decks.
Decks with land tax.
It's alright there. But the Corpse Dance decks would have like instant speed, recursive
Sure.
Wrathful God.
Yeah, which is good.
But is also a bit of living the magical dream.
Right.
Where Blood Gift
consistently
Demon...
just kind of like drawing a card or occasionally poking your opponent.
Yeah.
Because that does occasionally come up.
Well, it happens when your opponent's at 2 or 1.
Right. Yeah,
Blood Gift Demon, 5 power flyer for 5. Also has really nice Phyrexian Arena attached to it. I think Blood Gift Demon continues to win the fight here.
Yeah,
if we had to bring
it's
one
not
of these guys
particularly
back.
exciting, but I mean, I think
It's not
the
like
winner.
aggro decks would have to be more prevalent, but also worse.
Yeah,
For Kagamaru to make a comeback.
we have to like cut good aggro cards and
But
control
continue
cards
to
for
put-
bad aggro cards.
to continue to put in creatures.
Yeah.
In the hope of being like, yes, this is the answer.
Also, here's another like tard slap fight, similar to the opportunity.
Not
Knights
politically
Desire.
correct. Not politically correct.
Coercion versus bog down.
I want bogged down.
I don't. I want a gun. Just end this. I'm gonna just say bog down so we don't have to talk about this because I don't want either of these cards.
I think this is the talking point here is...
There's no talking point. Do not play either of these cards.
Is this the troll one?
This is the troll one. We're moving on.
Has anyone ever played Coercion in Cube?
I don't care. I don't even want to know. I don't care.
Okay.
Sudden Death versus Slaughter. So I think this one is kind of close. I like Sudden Death a fair amount more, if only because 3 versus 4 is such a big deal. Like
Black still struggles with 3 casting cost cards. That is its weakness. Well, one of its weaknesses.
Sudden Death, like
Looking for card advantage, buyback at not the cost of mana could be relevant.
sure, but at the same time, like Split Second is surprisingly relevant as creatures do more. Like, there are so few vanilla guys in Cube at this point. Like, even outside of like Enter the Battlefield triggers, like so many creatures when they are in play do something. They sacrifice for this, or they tap for that, or they do whatever.
Or often have activated abilities that might protect themselves.
Or pump your team, or change this, or whatever. So like Split Second being able to like it's uncounterable. They can't stop it. They can't trick you. Whatever. Is very, very useful. You know, Sudden Shock was in for a long time, and it was the same kind of thing. Like, being able to just, like, pop something and they can't do anything about it was very, very useful. It was kind of low impact, but it was good. So Sudden Death kind of is the same sort of thing. Slaughter kind of reminds me, in a weird way, of Snuff Out, where...
Well, it's got a lot of the same text.
it jumbled around in a way. Where my thing is paying for life is almost never worth it.
Huh.
Like, you have to... Like, in order for that to really be worth it, you have to be killing, like, 5/5s, like, multiples.
At 4 mana?
Like, which is very slow, very awkward, and, like, you're probably losing the game on other fronts.
So if this had been Slaughter versus Snuff Out would win handily. Would you say?
No, because I still don't want to pay for life. I think, like, Sudden Death is the removal spell at 3 mana or more we are not playing that I would want most.
Not even 3 mana or less?
No. Less than 3 mana, I would want Terror.
What if it was Sudden Death versus Terror and you had to have one in the cube?
Terror.
Take Terror.
2 versus 3 is such a huge deal.
What if it was Rend Flesh versus Sudden Death?
Rend Flesh versus Sudden Death. I'm taking Sudden Death.
Okay. So Sudden Death is the number one.
Split Second is
mana.
just that relevant, I think. To me.
I'm trying to think of examples to the contrary. I'm not having a good... I back you. I back you here. This is a Sudden Death win. It's more of just an unfortunate circumstances for Slaughter.
Slaughter's just so slow.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. It's just slow. Oh, this is a sweet one. Yeah, I like this fight. Fathom Seer versus Riptide Survivor in the Battle of Awesome Morphs.
I really like Riptide Survivor because I really want it to be a draw 3 all the time. Because you will notice that it says discard first, then draw 3. So if your hand is empty, it's just an unmorph due into a draw 3. As where Fathom Seer is a kind of free morph effect.
It's Gush.
Into Gush, yeah.
I like Gush.
I like Gush too. And the Gush creature in this particular example is obviously a lot more defensive, a lot more in the now. The question is, how do you like your card draw? Like, how do you like your eggs done? Do you like
So my thing about Fathom or Riptide Survivor is, so I have very fond memories of Riptide Survivor from its original limited format.
Oh yes, very strong.
Which was my first limited format.
Oh,
I know, dating myself, but I feel like in Cube, if you are the blue deck and you have no cards in your hand, you're in a lot of trouble. Like, something has gone very wrong for you.
Oh, maybe you're playing Reanimator. Maybe you've got some new Madness cards we just added back in. Maybe you've binned your whole hand.
If you're playing Reanimator and want to discard, Fathom Seer is faster. Because you just unmorph it immediately, go up to 9 cards.
Your hand size goes up to 4. Yeah, all right. So what I'm hearing is Fathom Seer.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to Gush the card being in Cube. I'm not saying that I want that right now, but I would be open to that discussion.
What if this was actually Gush versus Fathom Seer?
If this was... Well, that would be weird because they...
Well, let's just cheat it for a second. Because
I would say Gush.
It's blue where there's the 2/3 spell.
I would say Gush because then I never have tap mana on my own turn.
Well, you could tap 2 blue. You can return the tiles you had. You can play them.
Yeah, sure. But,
right, all right.
So I think Fathom Seer is just... it's a little faster. You can potentially get weird with it, which is always good. Riptide Survivor, just by modern standards, seems clunky and awkward to really take advantage of, personally. So I'm going Fathom Seer.
All right.
Next up on the fight card, Kaiga the Tide Star versus Sphinx of Dwar Isle. Fight.
This is also one that we covered a lot on Twitter. I think
we're in the Twitter.
I think that most people landed on Sphinx of Dwar Isle, which I think was a pretty surprising and big game, considering, especially now with Modern Masters drafts happening.
Shroud is such a beating.
Yeah,
Shroud is a beating.
Kind of what it boiled down to. It was Flying Shroud Man.
Kaiga has come and gone, and Sphinx of Dwar Isle is holding strong. It's just really hard to stop Sphinx of Dwar Isle from doing what it's doing. Kaiga, there are situations where it doesn't do anything. If they don't have guys, the trigger is irrelevant.
And that's the prime example of the...
Or, you still, maybe all they have is, some crummy, little dudes, and it doesn't really matter which one you take, and none of them are good. But, Sphinx just is an absolute brick house. It's so hard to stop. I really like it. It's,
we're not even talking about the remove from game effects. The premier removal in the form of cards like Path and Swords, O-Ring and such that can just kind of negate.
Sure. Banisher Priest, new entrant.
Yes.
Tribal Flames versus Flame Rift. Fight.
Back when there was a lot more Wild Nakatl-esque zoo going on, and maybe this conversation is one that kind of bleeds into Flinthoof Boar more. You want the Tribal Flames? Someone like Sam would love a Tribal Flames because he's a 5-color zoo drafter. Alternatively, Flame Rift, if you're just going to go for the face, you got it done. A lot of people, especially in modern Magic, you've seen a lot of people use Tribal Flames as just a 5U game over. And Flame Rift can be another angle for that. You can see it in the Legacy Burn decks, and you can kind of bring that to the table in Cube, where it's a lot easier. If you're playing Mono Red, you want Flame Rift, you don't really want Tribal Flames. And maybe this is more of a question of what kind of Cube do you have? What do you want to support? Maybe you want neither, maybe you want both.
I think that if I had to pick one, Mono Red is something that is very easy to support. In more general terms,
it supports itself.
There's a lot of overlap. Cards do the same things. If
you've
got a million different pay some mana, do some damage.
You go back to our red episode, we covered. That's what red does. We
Tribal Flames, however, is unique in that it really is one of the few cards that rewards the 5-color drafter extensively.
It's almost a green card.
Well, it's interesting because like it rewards the 5-color drafter, but it also rewards a specific kind of 5-color drafter that is the basic lands. Like you can't be doing this off of Hinterland Harbor and Glacial Fortress or whatever.
But you can't be doing it off of Volcanic Island and Godless Shrine.
Sure. No question there. But I think that because Tribal Flames is a little different, I'm gonna go that direction. Just because it's something there, you know, there's not a lot of cards at this point that really reward the 5-color deck. So throwing them a few bones is fine.
So it gets your vote almost because it's not as much a red card.
Like a lot of decks that still, you know, 2 damage, maybe 3, depending if they've got some off-color, you know, random lands lying around. And that's not the worst. Like,
no,
I really rewarding the go big kind of deck.
I think you've really kind of convinced me here. I was thinking, you know, like, well, you know, the mono-red player doesn't want Tribal Flames. It seems like a more of a negative there. Like, you would want the Flame Rift because that's the card that will always make their, well, not always, more likely make their deck is going to be more of a power player there.
You just don't need it. Like, Flame Rift just feels like...
Sometimes you need it. Sometimes the draft isn't full of the prime. Because a card like Flame Rift is going to be... It's not like Lightning Bolt, or not like Chain Lightning.
Sure.
The mono red drafter is going to get it.
Right, but at that point, like, just play Lava Spike. Like, put Lava Spike in.
Ugh. Yeah, you could.
Like, that's a better card for racing. And it fits into more of your curve. Like, but if this was Tribal Flames versus Lava Spike, it wouldn't even be, like, would it even be a point to talk about?
I think I just want Tribal Flames. I mean, I've been talked into Tribal Flames this time, so I don't think it's close either. So I like Tribal Flames.
Appetite for Brains versus Despise. Fight.
We play Appetite. We have played Despise in the past. We currently only play Appetite. I love Appetite because it's a... Oh.
That's fine.
Oh, a little chunky. All right, we're still good. Still good. I like Appetite because it's like a 3-drop or a 4-drop disguised as a 1-drop. If you're on the play, you want to kind of unleash it the turn before your opponent would cast their 4-drop or more.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. If you have other plans or you want to take a look at them, then it works. I like it a lot. Despise almost seems like it's more potential for a brick than Appetite.
Right. So my biggest issue with Despise is, at least in our list, being very close to creatureless is absolutely a real thing that happens on the regular. And there are just not enough Planeswalkers where the second half of that card is relevant all the time. And on top of that, like, obviously hitting Planeswalkers is very good, right? Like, making them discard Jace the Mind Sculptor, ideal. But making them discard guys, like, Black already does not have a problem dealing with creatures. Like that side of, like, you know, instead of duress, it's ostracized or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's not good.
The point is you want to hit enchantments, you want to hit artifacts. You'll also hit all the Planeswalkers except for Lil
The
Jace
reason duress is good is
Lil
because duress strips out of their hand the cards that you cannot deal with your 50 terrors.
in the color black, yeah.
Yeah. So
this one ended up being a lot easier than I thought it was going to be because I think this is one that comes up often with people online.
I mean, I see a lot of Despise, and I think that people just I don't know if it's an overestimation or just they haven't really done the math on how few Planeswalkers there are in cubes.
Or it's like, if I make them discard the creature, they don't get the enter the battlefield trigger, and that's better than a tear, or I maybe don't have enough tears or something. I don't know.
I mean, exiling it is also relevant for Appetite.
Yeah. It's
preventing like, Appetite's an amazing card against Reanimator.
Yeah.
Like, peg their Gristlebrand or whatever, like, that's very good. So, yeah.
Ah, there's the Rend Flesh that I was talking about from earlier.
Victim of Night versus Rend Flesh.
We play Victim. I was initially afraid that Victim was going to be, you know, hey, it's double black. I don't want to play double black. I'd rather play a black and 2 colorless, and I'm going to hit more stuff with it. In practice, Victim of Night's actually been just fine, and I think it's almost more of a boon for the black drafters because they have more access to it. They're going to get it much more likely.
I mean, that's the argument behind all kinds of cards, like Necro or Phyrexian Obliterator, Geralt's Messenger, or whatever.
No one's gonna like so.
No one's gonna fight you for first obliterate.
The thing about black is like the top 10 black cards in all of Cube
are all black.
The black drafter doesn't ever have access to because any other drafter's like, oh, Vampire Tutor, oh, Demonic Tutor,
oh, Mind Twist.
Yeah, like I'll take these. As we're here, I was thinking kind of the opposite. I was like, okay, we'll plant this in there. It's a way to deal with cards like Ghost Council. It's instant speed. It's going to get a lot of stuff. And I wasn't 100% sure. That's why I wanted to have like this face off. But in practice, Appetite's been really good.
Victim of Night? I mean, you said Appetite.
Oh, sorry. I was already the last one.
Yeah.
I'm reading chat. Yes, Victim of Night. Victim of Night.
So, I'm okay with Victim. I think I would rather try Renflesh, specifically for the fact that I can play it in more decks. I mean, even in my black decks, double black early is not always an easy thing to do. Like, depending on your mana fixing, you can be playing like black-blue and have difficulty hitting black-black early enough where Victim of Night is relevant, whereas Red Flesh is going to hit. I am pretty sure there are more spirits than vampires, werewolves, and zombies combined, but I'm not 100% on that. I know Obsidat's a spirit, so that's one strike against Red Flesh.
Yeah.
But I think that would be an interesting part of the discussion is the count on those.
And additionally,
I don't believe there's any incidental splice in the cube at this point.
I mean, a splice onto Arcane Spell would have to be good enough on its own.
Yeah, Glacial Ray, nope.
And we're always talking about how black can help black. Maybe Victim of Night isn't one of those examples where black can help black. Not being able to kill their Nighthawks and their other things.
I mean, I think there's certainly an argument for trying to make black really, really trying to make mono black good. A lot of people have tried that, right? It comes up, or people try and make Obliterator and the Geralt's Messenger into First Seed Obliterator deck a reality, and Victim of Night is very good at those realities, but I'm not sure it's best in the average cube. I think that Renflesh is just going to destroy more things. It's going to fit in more decks. I mean, really, what these card fights or what these things should be is, what card are drafters going to want more, so that they have more interesting discussions while drafting.
Hopefully,
the ideal cube has no consistent 15th picks.
Exactly. That's your goal.
Renflesh is going to be consistently in the discussion of being picked higher than Victim of Night is, if only because of its casting cost.
That is a good point. That is a good point. And that's part of the problem with black right now is we're trying to figure out where and how to go with it. That brings us to the end of tonight's episode and card fights for the evening, all in one foul swoop. Thanks everyone for showing up here tonight on the live side, and thanks everyone who listens and stays with the show for sticking with our little delay. Had a little bit of a publicity surge with all the podcasts I've been hitting recently, and now we just had a bit of a lag between. Yes, we will be streaming a Cube Draft later, but I gotta take care of some business first. First and foremost, check out ekamon.blogspot.com for updates to the list, which will happen soon. We posted one from there a while ago.
I need to do some housekeeping.
Yeah, we've got put some photos from the recent Cube Drafts put up there. I've taken some shots recently. I also putting a small video together from some footage from that, and we'll post on the blog hopefully at some point. So check that out. Follow us on Twitch would be very helpful, actually, since we've broken 200 recently.
That was a nice milestone.
We'd like to break 300 since we're steadily on the upcline. We need to get back here every week. You can find us also every week on MTGcast. Those guys are still posting us, although Chewy's very bad at getting back to our emails. So look into that. You can follow me on Twitter at Tristan Gregson. Shoot me any questions about Cube or anything else. You can follow Eck over at Young Mecha on Twitter. And any other info we need to inform people on right now?
No. We will be. I will be streaming Cube Drafts all this week.
Donate. Please.
I work until 5 p.m. Pacific time, so it will likely be after that 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific time, probably 1 or 2 drafts a night. For those on the live side right now, probably in a half an hour we will be doing one.
A little food intermission.
Yeah, so I'll close the stream. Everyone can hang out for a little bit, but then I will reopen it and we will. I'll get into drafting then.
And if you're listening to this after the fact, like many of you are, go back in the Twitch archives, check out X Drafts. I'm sure it'll be very
so they'll end up on Twitch. But again, also if you're listening to this after the fact, as long as it's still the week where Cube is up, if you come on in the evenings Pacific time, I should be streaming. You can come on, hit the chat, talk, ask questions, whatever,
I may end up lurking in the chat if I don't get a chance to come down here and bird it IRL, if you will.
So, anyway, that's our plan. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we shall talk to you either next week